2017 is here at last, and if you thought things were all change, you're naive. For example, it's only been 2 days into the new year, and 2 salty, deluded developers have already accused me of defamation. They're 2 old friends as well. One of them is Shooter Tactics Guy, you know, that person who keeps uploading the same game to Greenlight over and over again, and is also homophobic. And Operation Caucasus developer has accused me of defamation, bullying, and copyright theft. The developer of Operation Caucasus, Dream Games, I think it's called, has hit me with a copyright strike on the top 10 shittiest games list that I did last week, or at least tried to, because the fair use policy stepped in and they couldn't do it. So, tough luck. Looks like 2017 is going to remain a year of self-important game developers and Jim Sterling being better than them. Let's crack on with the show.
Our new open world games map is 120,000 square miles. Our game's environments are twice as big as they were in the last game. We've made a huge universe. Look how big all these games are. We've made our game so big. The square feet, the size, the universe. And if you're excited about the size, the huge big size of all these huge big video games, just wait until we tell you about the amazing fun things you can do in these massive fuckers. Oh, okay. The size of a game's map has been a huge selling point in the past several years as the concept of the open-world action game supplanted the first-person shooter as the easy go-to AAA cash cow. Ubisoft has remained one of the biggest champions of this shift, with CEO Yves Gillette the best a man can get, personifying his company's inherent lack of imagination by declaring Ubi's intent to basically turn every single fucking game into Assassin's Creed. In the video game industry, it would appear that size indeed matters, and the marketing departments are more than happy to let you know it. The problem is that video games are so thoroughly obsessed with making their games as big as possible, a lot of them have forgotten to actually put things in their vast, expansive, utterly boring vacuums. We've all seen the results with Ubisoft's slew of open-world snooze fests, so many open worlds from Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, The Division, The Crew, and barely any memorable locations among any of the fuckers. You know, there's a reason why Grand Theft Auto and Elder Scrolls sequels take several years to be released, because they're actually constructing worlds full of distinctive and notable locales, tons of missions and quests that have a load of structuring, writing, and thought put into them. By contrast, Ubi's cookie-cutter playpens tend to consist of existing cities, more or less reconstructed without imagination, or large wastelands of fuck all with indistinguishable bases and radio towers and settlements dotted like islands in a sea of room temperature piss. The current crop of open world games are, I think, aware of the problem, but rather than take the time and effort required to back up these big worlds with, you know, a meaningful activities, far too many of them have opted instead to settle into a familiar little masking tactic that we can simply call content. Content. Nebulous, contextless content, shoved into the empty spaces between what little sparks of meaning all these open world games may possess. You know what I'm talking about, the endless, repetitive side missions that are just identical busywork tasks. The original Infamous was... infamous for this, where the non-story missions were culled from a meagre handful of uninteresting tasks like climb a building and break these things all over the sides of them and then do that 1,000 bloody times. Side quests in open world games used to be actual quests on the side. You know, their own self-contained missions with stories and events and actual things happening. Please consult The Witcher 3 if you've forgotten what I'm talking about. As open worlds have gotten larger, however, developers have opted to replace these quests with enemy bases that must be destroyed the exact same way each time, radio towers that must be climbed the exact same way each time, and oh God, the collectibles. Open world games have always had collectibles, like GTA's hidden packages, but the sheer amount of them in fucking games these days is ludicrous. Hell, a lot of them have more than one type of collectible, just loads of different types of goddamn items dotted all over these ginormous worlds that exist for no fucking reason, other than to make customers think they didn't spend their money on a big empty husk of unsatisfactory bollocks. This is what happens though, when scale and sheer volume are valued way above fun and variety. It's not about giving players lots of enjoyable, interesting things to do, it's about being able to say on press releases that you made a really big game. Ubisoft's gone absolutely off its tits when it comes to nebulous content. Zooming out of an Assassin's Creed map screen is enough to make your eyes bleed, what with the hundreds of markers and icons spewed all over the world. None of it's really compelling, all of it's an example of something the game does at least a dozen times over, and all of it's serving to unwittingly highlight how pointless it is that so many open world games are actually open world. Really, if you're struggling to fill a vast map by copying and pasting the same old objectives then tossing them all over the shop, then I'd argue you've failed to justify your game being an open world one in the first place. At that point, you're doing it for the bloody sake of it, which sums up Ubisoft's entire operation this past decade. No Man's Sky has of course been the logical extreme endpoint of this attitude where the size of a game is more important than what the game actually does. For all its hype about having a massive universe to witness with tons of gigantic planets and the oceans of space to explore, No Man's Sky is a very small game. Small in terms of vision, anyway. And yes, I said it's got a small vision. Just because you made a big game doesn't mean you have a big vision. It's minuscule in terms of that. If you were to take everything No Man's Sky offers and take out all the empty spaces between that shit, you'd have a world no bigger than 1-1 of Super Mario Bros. When every spaceship behaves the same way, every encounter plays out from a tiny series of samey scenarios, and you start seeing blatantly recycled content within the first hours, any sense of scale is completely undermined. Once you've shattered the image of the world being a breathing, mutable place, you've fucked up completely, and this was one of No Man's Sky's, as well as many big open world games' problems. A giant world of cardboard is far less impressive than a small world that actually feels alive. The current crop of large-scale, big-budget games have forgotten that completely, making generously portioned yet lifelessly presented arenas full of cardboard cutout NPCs, Lego brick-style procedural generation, and incessantly repetitive busywork quests. All of these cut corners taken in the struggle to make the biggest game ever are like exposing the strings in a puppet show, and your impressively endowed map counts for little when it's less believable than the average Thunderbirds episode.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Not to bang on No Man's Sky too much, but I think that game's quote-unquote ending was the absolute perfect demonstration of what these massive, ambitious, utterly shallow endeavours are like. You got this colossal universe with one overarching goal to find its centre, with Molyneux-like enthusiasm did Halo games tantalise and tease about the great mystery at the centre of No Man's Sky's shallow little paddling pool, and after hours upon hours of slogging through identikit planets, Duplo animals and endless carbon mining, what was the reward? What, pray, lied in that juicy centre for those who experienced an undoubtedly gargantuan but finely spread jaunt through a world that could best be described as mostly void, partially stars? Well, spoiler alert kids, because if you've not seen it before, here's what's waiting for you at the end, and if it was intended as a joke, it'd make Sean Murray the anti-fucking Kaufman of the game world.
I got the brains, you got the looks. Let's make lots of money.
Games media goes along with this too, happily supplying the headlines when PR tells them about the square mileage of the latest factory standard open world pantomime, but nobody ever stops someone to ask exactly what goes on in these lavish leviathans until it's too late. People act as if open world games are the only action games allowed to exist anymore. Hell, I've seen people online say if something isn't open world, they aren't interested in it. So I'm not shocked the focus group obsessed world of AAA video games believes that's what the whole world wants. But the dirtying of the word linear and the push for everything to be a sandbox has creative problems outside of the desperate struggle for amorphous content. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is a fine example, a game that became ostensibly open world just to try and conform to industry trends without regard for how that'd affect the actual game, which it did. Negatively, a restricted map made almost exclusively of bottlenecks that required frequent mind-numbing backtracking. There was no reason and no creative point for Catalyst to be open world. Like so many others, it did it for the sheer effing sake of doing it. This industry is forgetting how linearity benefits a good story. There's a reason why the traditional story structure of beginning, middle and end is so popular. It's because it works incredibly well, and if you're not a very good storyteller to begin with, attempting to deviate from that sequence is usually a terrible idea. Hell, even if you're good, it's often a bad idea. Open world games move at the pace of the player and inherently disrupt that sequence, since progressing the narrative is a mere option that can be ignored at whim. Without the game directing the story at an intended pace, it can lose a lot of important things that more guided plots benefit from. A building of tension, a lead up to a satisfying payoff, the threat of a ticking clock. These are all possible to pull off to varying degrees of success in open world games, some of which can have wonderful stories as well, but it's harder to do and most fail, and there are some things only linear experiences can pull off, like the sense of the wandering journey in The Last of Us, or the hazard-filled road trip from hell atmosphere in Half-Life 2. These are games that benefit from having clear starts, middles and ends across carefully directed and paced environments. If Gordon Freeman could hop off Highway 17 anytime he liked to go and collect bits of hidden sheet music, I don't think it would have had quite the same punch. And while I've defended the Elder Scrolls earlier, I gotta admit the usual save the world from encroaching evil plot really means fuck all when the encroachment of said evil can be put off literally indefinitely to build my dream house and ask random pubgoers to teach me to talk better. These are the things I'm concerned about when developers are telling us about the immensity of their geography. Don't tell me how big the game is, tell me what I can do in it. Don't talk to me of square miles, tell me what you've put in each of those square miles, and no, it better not be one of 500 fucking journal entries or antique treasures that have no tangible gameplay value. I'm sick of being told how big a thing is. Without anything qualifying that, you might as well be telling us how blue your fucking skies are.
I'm just saying, look at the size of me and look how much quality content I produce. Not much. Size is no guarantee of quality. I'm going to leave you with that thought, and also the thought that it was my birthday yesterday, no pressure, and remind you all that no matter what year it is, every single day is a very fine day to thank God for me. I'll take Boglins for my birthday.